I never imagined I would spend my 30s haunted by ghosts who weren't even dead. My name is Han. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my life, I carried the kind of silence that doesn't just break you, it eats you alive. They say time heals all wounds, but whoever said that never lived my life, never felt betrayal, like a knife turning slowly in the chest year after year. Time doesn't heal what you refuse to face. And for so long I didn't face it. I buried it. Until it buried me. I was born the eldest daughter of a family that worshipped appearances. My father was a stern man, a businessman who cared more about reputation than tenderness. My mother, delicate and soft-spoken on the outside, had a way of cutting me down with the gentlest smile. And then there was my younger brother Kwan, their pride, their golden child, the one who could do no wrong. It's almost funny in a cruel way how invisible I became under their roof. I learned early that my worth wasn't in who I was, but in what I could endure without complaint. But I wasn't always invisible. When I was 20, I fell in love for the first time. His name was Koa. He was kind, persistent, the sort of man who saw through walls I didn't even know I had built. He made me laugh in a way I had never laughed before. For the first time I believed I was worthy of love, not because of what I could give, but simply because I existed. We would sneak out at night, sit beneath the old banyan tree by the lake, and whisper about a future where I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. He told me he would marry me, and I believed him, but I didn't know then how cruel blood could be. The first fracture came when I noticed the way my brother looked at him, Koa. Not with envy of a man's strength or charm, but with the coveting hunger of someone who wanted to take what wasn't his. At first I dismissed it. Why would my brother, my own blood, compete with me for love? But then Koa grew restless. His eyes darted when I asked simple questions. His laughter around Kwan was too loud, too eager, and one night when I came home earlier than expected, I found them in the courtyard, Koa's hand resting just a little too long on my brother's shoulder. I wanted to believe it was nothing. But you know how the heart knows long before the mind admits it. I knew. Something was breaking. The truth shattered me not long after. I confronted Koa, begging him to be honest, to tell me I was imagining it all. He couldn't even meet my eyes. And then in a voice that still rings in my nightmares, he said, "I'm sorry, Han. It's Kwan. It's always been him." My knees gave out. The air vanished. My lover, the man I thought I would marry, had chosen my brother, the same brother who had been spoiled and exalted all his life. The one who had already taken every ounce of love and pride my parents had to give. Now he had taken the only thing that belonged to me, and my parents. They didn't rage. They didn't comfort me. They told me I should be grateful that Kwa stayed in the family, that at least his loyalty was close to home. Imagine that, my grief dismissed like spilled milk, my heartbreak repackaged as convenience. I left that night. I couldn't breathe in that house of lies. I wandered, worked small jobs in the city, tried to piece myself back together. But the wound festered. Every laugh I heard in passing reminded me of the laughter that wasn't mine anymore. Every couple I saw reminded me of the life stolen from me. And worst of all, every holiday, every family photo I wasn't in, was proof that they had erased me, painted me out like I had never existed. For years I kept silent. For years I convinced myself I could forget. Until the phone rang last winter. My mother's voice, older but no less sharp, told me my father had passed. She said, "Come home, hun. We need you." As if those words could stitch decades of abandonment into something whole again. Against my better judgment, I went back. Maybe part of me wanted closure. Maybe part of me wanted to see their faces, to remind them that I was still alive. But when I walked into that house, nothing had changed. My brother, my golden brother, was now the head of the family business. And Kwa. He stood beside him, his hand entwined with my brother's, his eyes deliberately avoiding mine. They were happy, they were triumphant. And my mother, she welcomed me with a smile that was less love and more calculation, as if my presence was a tool she might still use. I thought I would break all over again, but I didn't. Something colder settled in me instead. For the first time I saw clearly. They had built their lives on my pain, carved their happiness out of my silence. And I realized standing there that I wasn't going to let them bury me again. No. This time I would dig up every secret, every lie, and watch their world collapse the way they had collapsed mine. Revenge wasn't a choice anymore. It was the only language they had ever taught me. When I returned to that house, the walls still smelled faintly of sandalwood and old paper, the same scents I had grown up with. But what used to be home felt like a mausoleum now, where every piece of furniture held a memory I didn't want to revisit. My father's portrait hung in the living room, garlanded with flowers. Guests whispered condolences, praising his legacy, his discipline, his family values. I stood among them like a ghost, unseen, unheard, wondering if anyone knew what his discipline had cost me. Kwan stood at the center of it all, shoulders squared, wearing my father's old watch like a crown. And Kwa God Kwa hovered beside him, not quite family in blood, but family in every way that mattered. Their smiles were polite, rehearsed, the kind that never reached the eyes. When Kwa finally looked at me, it was fleeting, as if I were a stranger intruding on a private gathering. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Once upon a time that man had sworn he'd marry me. Now he couldn't even hold my gaze. I should have left after the funeral, but something inside me anchored me there. It wasn't grief for my father, not really. It was the weight of secrets. Because when my mother pressed a worn box into my hands later that night, her eyes heavy and unreadable, I felt the first shift in the ground beneath me. "These were his," she said quietly. "He wanted you to have them." Alone in the small room that used to be mine, I opened the box. Inside were letters, documents, journals, all in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I sifted through them, but one envelope caught my attention. It was addressed to me, my name written in his careful, stern script. I broke the seal with shaking fingers and began to read. "Hun, if you are reading this, I am gone. There are truths I never had the courage to tell you while I was alive. Forgive me for my silence. You are always stronger than I allowed myself to admit. Kwan is not who you think he is. He is not your brother. He is the son of a betrayal your mother tried to bury. I raised him as mine, but his blood is not my blood. You, Hun, you are my only true child." True. The words blurred through my tears. My brother, the golden boy who had stolen everything, wasn't even my father's son. The weight of it pressed down on me, equal parts vindication and devastation. All those years of being cast aside, diminished, erased. And the truth was that I had been the rightful heir all along. My breath came in ragged gasps. I wanted to scream, to tear the walls down, to march into that living room and shout it in their faces. But instead I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Revenge, I realized, wasn't just about taking back what was stolen. It was about justice for me, for the girl who had been silenced, and maybe even for the father who had lived and died with secrets rotting in his heart. In the days that followed, I stayed close, quiet as a shadow, watching. Kwan basked in his new role, making decisions with arrogance he hadn't earned. Kwa played the dutiful partner, though I caught glimpses of unease in his eyes whenever debts or business troubles were mentioned. Because yes, despite the polished exterior, the empire was cracking. Suppliers muttered about unpaid bills. A cousin whispered that loans had been taken out in secret. And through it all, my mother floated like a ghost, her face pale, her silence heavier than any words. One night I confronted her. We sat in the kitchen where she used to braid my hair as a child, though now her hands shook as she poured tea. I laid the letter on the table between us. She froze, her knuckles whitening around the cup. "You knew," I said. My voice was steady, but inside a storm raged. "All these years you let me believe I was nothing. You let me suffer while protecting him. Why?" Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't move me. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid of losing everything. Afraid your father would leave me. Kwan, he was innocent." "Innocent," I hissed. "He took my life, my love, my place, and you handed it all to him." Her tears spilled over, but I turned away. I had no room left for pity. She had chosen silence, and silence had destroyed us all. That night as I lay awake, the plan began to form in my mind. The anniversary of the business was approaching, a grand celebration where Kwon would present himself as the new head of the family, where Kwa would stand beside him as though nothing had ever been stolen. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. I would not scream in private. I would not whisper in shadows. I would stand before them all in the bright lights of their celebration, and I would strip away every lie they had built their lives on. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the storm they had created. The night of the anniversary arrived like a storm I had been waiting for my whole life. The restaurant gleamed with garlands of lights, the air thick with perfume and money. Every table was filled with businessmen, local officials, distant relatives who suddenly cared about our family name now that Kwon was in charge. Cameras flashed as guests posed with him and Koa, their smiles dazzling under the chandeliers. I lingered at the back unnoticed in my simple black dress. My hair was tied back, my face bare. My father's letter folded carefully in my clutch. My heart pounded, but not with fear, with certainty. This was the night they would finally see me, not as the forgotten daughter, but as the rightful heir, the woman they had buried alive and failed to keep down. Kwon took the stage first, standing tall, his hand gripping Kwa's like they were royalty presenting themselves to a kingdom. Tonight, he declared, we honor our father's legacy and we carry it forward together. His voice boomed with confidence, but I saw the flicker of arrogance beneath it, the way his eyes sought approval from every corner of the room. Applause erupted, glasses clinked. My mother beamed from the front table, her smile trembling just slightly. She knew what I carried in my hands. She knew the truth. But she had chosen her silence once again. When the clapping subsided, I stepped forward. The crowd parted instinctively as if sensing the shift in the air. I climbed the steps to the stage, each footstep echoing louder than the last. Kwon frowned confused while Koa's face drained of color. This celebration, I said, my voice steady, carrying through the microphone I plucked from its stand, is built on lies. The room froze. The laughter died, the clinking stopped. All eyes turned to me. Kwon forced a laugh. Sister, this isn't the time. Stop calling me that. My words cut sharp, slicing the silence clean. I pulled the folded letter from my clutch and held it high. You are not my father's son. You never were. This restaurant, this name, this legacy, it was never yours to claim. Gasps erupted. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like waves crashing against stone. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her wineglass tipping over. Koa took a step forward, but his eyes betrayed panic, not denial. I opened the letter and began to read. Each word from my father's handwriting landed like a blow. Kwon is not who you think he is. He is the son of a betrayal your mother tried to bury. I raised him as mine, but his blood is not my blood. Han, you are my only true child. The room erupted in whispers, some shocked, some scandalized. Faces turned toward Kwon, toward my mother, toward Kwa, waiting for denial, for explanation. But none came. I let the letter fall onto the podium, the pages fluttering like ashes. My chest rose and fell with a steady rhythm, but inside a storm of rage and relief clashed. You took my love, you took my place, you erased me. And all along your empire was built on lies. Queen's face twisted, his polished composure cracking. This is nonsense, he snapped, his voice louder than it should have been. She's lying, trying to ruin everything. Ooh. But his voice wavered, he was cornered, and the crowd could see it. Hua reached for him, whispering something, but the audience had already begun to shift. Whispers became accusations. Eyes that once glowed with admiration now burned with suspicion. Investors exchanged sharp looks. Relatives pulled out their phones, snapping photos of the fallen mask. I looked at Kwon, at Kwa, at my mother sitting frozen in her chair. And I should have felt triumph. I should have felt vindication. But instead a strange hollowness spread through me. The truth was out, yes. Their empire was crumbling, yes. But the years they had stolen, the scars they had carved, the love I had lost, nothing could give those back. Still, as I stood there in the wreckage of their celebration, I realized I had reclaimed something more important than revenge, my voice, my place, myself. My place. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of dismissal anymore. It was the silence of recognition. For the first time in my life, they couldn't ignore me. And yet, deep inside, a question gnawed. If revenge could not heal me, what would? The hall emptied in fragments of whispers and heavy stares. Guests filed out with hurried steps, some shaking their heads, others stealing glances at me, as if I were both a villain and a savior. The chandeliers above still sparkled, but the room felt darker than ever. Quan stood rigid. His fists clenched, his mask of control shattered into jagged pieces. Kwa lingered beside him, pale lips pressed tight, his silence more damning than words. And my mother. She didn't move at all. She just sat there wilted, as if the weight of all her secrets had finally crushed her. I left before any of them could speak. Outside, the night air cut sharp against my skin, colder than I remembered. My legs carried me down the familiar streets past the glowing sign of the restaurant that once felt like home. I thought I would feel victorious, lighter somehow, but what I felt was emptiness. Revenge had burned bright inside me for so long that when the fire finally erupted, all it left was ash. The next morning, a knock rattled my motel door. When I opened it, Quan wasn't there. Neither was my mother. It was Koa. His face was drawn, exhaustion carving lines into the boyish features I had once adored. For a long moment we just stared at each other, two people bound by betrayal, drowning in what-ifs. "I never meant for it to happen," he said finally, voice hoarse. "I never meant to hurt you." I wanted to laugh, to scream, to slap the regret off his face. Instead I asked, "Then why did you?" His eyes dropped. "Because your brother always had what I wanted to be. Strong, untouchable, loved. I thought if I stood by him I could share some of that power. I was weak, hun. Weak in a way I couldn't admit until now." The words didn't heal me. They didn't erase the years of silence, the nights I had cried into my pillow, the years of loneliness. But for the first time, I saw him not as the love I had lost, nor the traitor who betrayed me, but as a broken man who had chosen cowardice. And I realized I didn't need his apology. I didn't need him at all. "I don't hate you anymore," I said softly. His head jerked up, surprised. "But I don't forgive you either. You'll live with what you did, Kwa. That's punishment enough." He swallowed hard, nodded, and left without another word. Later that day, I visited my father's grave. The soil was fresh, the flowers still bright against the cold stone. I knelt there, holding the letter in my hands one last time. "You should have told me," I whispered. "But maybe I understand why you couldn't." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of incense. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle, but this time it wasn't the silence of erasure. It was the silence of choice. I had spoken my truth. I had torn away the lies. And though it hadn't healed me completely, it had freed me. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't return to the house where my mother wept, or the restaurant where Kwan's empire crumbled. That night I boarded a bus out of town, watching through the window, as the streets I once called home disappeared into the dark. My story isn't one of neat justice or fairy tale endings. My brother still has his followers. My mother still clings to her silence. Kwa still carries his shame. But me, I carry only myself now. And maybe that's enough, because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying others. Sometimes it's about refusing to let betrayal define you any longer. Sometimes it's about walking away, carrying your truth like a torch into the darkness, until it lights a new path. So if you're hearing my story, if you've been broken by the people who were supposed to love you most, I want you to know you don't have to stay in their prison. You don't have to bear their sins. You can choose yourself. You can walk away. And if my story touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?